Many thanks for being with us the third day on the workshop on tourism monitoring in Antarctica. Just for those of you who have not been able to join us the last 2 days, we have become an obvious picture that we are not looking any longer only on tourism. We are talking about visitors. So everybody or every human that comes to Antarctica should be covered by that monitoring system. The third day now is on monitoring possibilities on land, and we have a similar structure as yesterday. I will give you a short provision of what has happened yesterday. Then we have a keynote by Osama Mustafa from the Thüringen Institute for Sustainability and Climate Protection. He will give us an interesting keynote on possible field methods in Antarctica, and then we have the possibility of questions and answers. Then we have a short discussion on, then we have a short presentation on the indicators and pressures and impacts we have identified so far, and for which we are still looking for usable monitoring methods. I'm currently not sure if we are going to break this time into 2 groups, because according to the registration, there should be 50 participants with us. At the moment, we are only 21, so probably we'll stay in one group again to have a more lively discussion. And then after this workshop, we are going to close the 3-day event by some reflections from the German Federal Environmental Agency, and providing you also some follow-up steps. Having said that, just as a recall of yesterday, where we discussed monitoring methods on that are possible via ships, we got quite some input of ongoing activities and links to documents we should look at. That was very useful. Thanks for that. However, still some elements require further investigation, or some potential pressures require further investigation, because no monitoring methods have been mentioned. The other thing we heard yesterday is the potential use of citizen science and how it can be used for monitoring. And that was quite inspiring, because there is a lot of things that can be monitored. The big question is how to deal with the massive data and how it can be stored, extracted from science, and managed. And the other question related to that was, what about the accuracy of the monitoring information? There are definitely some limitations, because it's not done in a standardized way. But as I said, Annette Brombusch presented us a couple of really nice examples where it works and where it can provide useful information to be used. Having said that, I hand over to Osama Mustafa. Maybe you want to introduce yourself with a couple of words, where you're coming from in terms of scientific background, and what your area of research is. So I think I have stopped my sharing the screen. Osama, please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, my name is already mentioned. I'm a geographer, basically, and I work in the Antarctic since more or less 20 years, with some gaps. We are a small consultant office, and our main part of our work is somewhere between remote sensing and ecosystem changes. And Yes, we have some experience done in the maritime Antarctic, so around the South Shetlands and the peninsula. But in recent years, we also worked in the continental Antarctic. Yes, I'm sharing my screen. Visible now?
Yes, it looks good. Thank you.
Yes. So I try to focus on some ideas or some thoughts we had, which is about methods which are possibly helpful to monitor tourism activity, or, like you say, visitor activity, because this is not always it's in many cases it's more or less close to each other, and the impact is the same. And so for the beginning, there is some kind of motivation which is related to this. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, so not far away, there was a very interesting publication. Maybe you have already discussed it or read it, I don't know, from Flynn et al. About the breeding behavior of penguins around Port Lockroy. I think most of you know the Port Lockroy site, which is very much frequented by tourists or visitors. And during the COVID closure, there were much less visitors, or almost no visitors. And the group, they were looking, they mapped the penguins there, the breeding sites, and they found that in the frequently visited areas, Port Lockroy and Jugular Point, the number of breeding penguins was rising very much, while it was decreasing in the more distant parts. So we see that somehow the penguins seem to get back their area, or the site, for breeding purposes. So and after the tourists came back, the situation changed again to the former amount of breeding penguins in the sites. And so we see that the human presence in fact has an impact on the breeding situation of the penguins there. So this leads us to the observation of to methods of observing animal populations. And as we came from the remote sensing world, I first want to introduce you to some of the technologies. So satellites are very often mentioned and are a very useful tool for many things, but not for everything. So I have three big types of satellites. So we have we call it medium resolution satellites, the high resolution satellites, and the radar satellites. So medium resolution satellites are usually freely available. It's the Sentinel and the Landsat platforms, and they are usually free available. They cover the whole continent with permanent taking images. And so we have a lot of images every day we can get from these satellites. But they only have this medium resolution from 10, 15 or more meter of ground sample distance. Ground sampling distance is it's called the resolution, the pixel size, simply said. There are more satellites with a higher resolution, but these satellites we have to pay for. The image costs money, and we have to ask them to make the image in advance. So this needs much more preparation. It needs much more funding, but the result you get is much more precise. So from 30, 50, 60 centimeters of the resolution of images, you can see much more things in such an image. We will see examples later. A special thing are the radar satellites. They are an active sensor, so they send out electromagnetic waves and get them back. And from the difference of these signals, they calculate, it's possible to calculate the surface properties. And you don't need to understand the principle of it too much, but you should know that the processing and the analysis of this data sets, of this data, of radar data, is much more challenging and more difficult than with optical satellites. Yes, there you see this side-looking principle. And another remote sensing platform which came up in the last years are the drones. Drones have the opportunity to get much more precise data. So we have a ground sampling distance of from 1 centimeter to a few centimeters, depending on the altitude you fly and on the sensor you use. And but you need to go in the field with the drones. And there are other advantages drones have, which are the clouds. In the Antarctic Peninsula, we very often have a lot of cloud cover where we don't have satellite images in these times. But with a drone, you can fly under the clouds, and this gives you much better information. We have 3 types of drones, 3 general types. So we have the multicopter. This is what most people know about drones. They think about multicopter drones, quattro or octo or whatever. They are easy to handle. They are not so expensive, and many people use it already in the Arctic. We also have fixed wing drones. Fixed wing drones are constructed like an airplane, which is much more economic, and so they can fly much longer and have longer in time and longer in range. But the flight planning is a little bit more difficult, and also you need good sites for landing and for taking off the plane. A kind of mixture which came up in the last years, we used one of them last season, the vertical takeoff and landing planes, who combine the technology of the multicopter and the fixed wing. So they take off vertically and change to a horizontal flight and do the landing again vertically. So this is a very nice technology, but it's a little bit more challenging in the flight planning, and it's not very cheap at the moment to use these planes. As an example for the different platforms, so the medium resolution satellite like Sentinel-2, which is very good available. You see an example here. This is the Adley Island penguin colony. I think most of you know this site. For tourists, this beach is the landing site and the site where people go, the visitor site. But as you see in this image, we get some signatures where we have some change. I know that this is guano signatures from penguins, but it's not very, very detailed. It's much better if you take the high resolution satellite. So it's the same scale, the same array of the image, and we have much more detailed information. So you see again the beach, and you have a 50 centimeter resolution on the ground. And these reddish signatures, these are the penguin breeding sites. So we don't see the single penguins in here, but we very clearly see the areas where they breed because they leave the guano in these areas. If we do the same with drones, so we have a drone mosaic in here. There we see much more details, and we even can see single black dots. These are the penguins. And if we zoom more in, we can see much more details of the penguins. We have a ground resolution of 2 centimeters, so you can imagine that a lot of details are visible there. So you see the different scale of information we get from these different platforms. But of course, the effort is much different. So it's very easy and very inexpensive with the free satellite images, but information is much better in the high resolution satellite image and in the drone images, as we can see here. But the price for this is some effort. To take these drone images is not so fast forward. You need to do a lot of things before. So you need to do a flight planning, because what you do is not a single image. You create a number of adjacent images, which were later combined to a mosaic. So first you do the flight planning. This you have to do at home. You have to take care for topography, for instance. You have to take care for the drone properties, and of course for the thing you want to observe. Then you go to the field, and as you see in this image, it is not just an overflight. It's a lot of stripes and things, a lot of ways you have to go with a drone to cover the full area, because you can imagine if you fly a drone at an elevation of, for instance, 100 meters, the area you cover on ground is also about 100 meters for an image. And if you have now a colony with 1 square kilometer size, you can easily calculate how many images you need to cover all the area. So finally, you combine all these images to a big mosaic, which is a kind of a process, software-based process, and you get information as 3D information, which is combined to a digital surface model and a mosaic, which is now auto-corrected with a correct geometry finally. So this is the result you want to have, and now we can start with the analysis of the things. So what I want to say with this is that drones are very powerful in the field, but if you want to have good data, you need to put some work in it to get this data from the drone. And it's also the interpretation of this data is not always so fast forward. For instance, in these images, we have 2 mosaics, only 12 days difference in time. And the red color is the guano distribution we got from these images. And you see in the same spot, it's very different. It's because the penguins are in a different state of their breeding phenology in this time. So they already left their nests. In the first image, they are already in their nests, and later they leave them, and the chicks create a kindergarten or crash near the beach. So also the guano now starts to accumulate in different sites. So you see the area is very different. So the interpretation of these images is not always very simple as it appears at the beginning. In this image, you see the question of time again. So this is the occupation of a colony during the breeding season. So at the beginning, the penguins come on land, start breeding, building their nest. In the breeding phase, the main breeding phase, we have a kind of plateau. And then at the end, when the chicks are larger and start going to kindergarten, the number of penguins decreases again. And not only the number of penguins, but the visible part of it, the guano. This is what we see in the satellite images. So the question, at what time you take satellite images, at what time you take a drone image is very important. So preferred in this phase. If not, you have difficulties to interpret this data. So To summarize this, so the medium resolution satellites give us a very rough estimation of the color of a penguin colony, of its size, of its distribution, and high resolution satellites give a much better estimation. And drones give us the opportunity to do really of doing a precise assessment of the population. But it's a high effort in planning and field work. You have to take care for topography, for date, and yeah, to make a good field campaign or good data. What people very often do with drones is doing oblique images, you know, to describe the landscape and so on. But this is for these monitoring purposes, it's useless. For monitoring special sites, maybe we can discuss about single shots, vertical shots from the drones. It may be an help for very small areas, but as I told you, if you fly 100-meter high with your drone, you usually cover an area of 100 by 100 meters, which is not so much area. Other things than the bird colonies or penguin colonies we found in the satellite images are vehicle tracks. So, for instance, this example shows vehicle track near the Union Glacier Camp, and yes, we see it in the optical image here, even in the medium resolution image, like the Landsat, very clear. Even after the winter season, you know, this image is taken in the 4th October, so some days ago. I think no new tracks, no new vehicles were already there after the winter time, and still we can see the line of the old track. So there is something happened to the snow surface or the ice surface that you still can see this track. This is another example, also medium resolution satellite Sentinel-2 near Drummond-d'Urville station. This is a track to Dome Concordia. I think it was for a drilling project and ice core drilling project. And you not only see the track, you also see this bulb of smoke from the machines driving over there. And also radar satellites give us a good picture of vehicle tracks on ice. This is a Sentinel-1 radar image, which shows us very clear this track in Running Mountain, and also in the next year. So after winter season, we see the track very, very clear. Radar satellites or radar imagery has the advantage that it passes some materials, dry materials, soft materials, like soft snow. It passes and sometimes shows us structures which are underneath the snow, like the crevasses we find here in this parts of the image, or the track which is under the snow of the new winter. In ice-free surfaces, we also can have tracks, and maybe this is more relevant for the tourist thing. But yes, we see them for this we really need high-resolution satellites or drone images to make them visible. They are not visible in medium-resolution satellites. This is an example from Adelaide Island. We know that this track is about, yes, when we took this image, it was about 20 years old, the lower left image. It's still very visible because the vegetation in Antarctica is very, very slow healing from disruptions. And we also can see these structures in the drone image 10 more years later. in the high-resolution image, we also can see these structures, but not as clear as in the drone image, but we can see them here near these arrows that are still available or still visible. Other kind of tracks are made by foot, by visitors. So we don't see them very good. So not in the medium resolution images, not in the high resolution satellite images, but from drone we can sometimes see very frequented tracks by visitors, like we see in this line, this footpath in Deception Island. Yes, we only see a very, very large tracks. Single tracks are difficult to see. In these cases, I think monitoring sometimes is better if you take an image on ground to explain this. Another example of foot track on ground. Something different from this, when we worked with the drones, we were asked to make disturbance experiments to evaluate the impact of drones to penguins and to other animals in the Antarctic. We did a lot of experiments with cameras. We observed the penguins, how they changed their behavior during the drone overflight, and there's now a lot of data about this. It's already published for many species. But my idea is, what about approaching persons in free-created landing sites? So there are some studies about this, about approaching persons, but not many, and not about many species which act different, and also not about things like habituation. Is it in tourist landing sites, do the animals habituate there to the visitors and are not so much disturbed if they come, or they are even more disturbed? So things like this are not very much, there are not many studies about this already now. Another tool which can be used for monitoring, we use this, not only we, but also others use it for long-term monitoring of penguin groups, mainly for get information about the breeding behavior and the breeding phenology of the penguins. So it's our remote cameras. So you install the cameras near a site of interest, for instance, a penguin colony, but can be something different there too. And with a time-lapse function, you record images in defined intervals. And one idea would be, maybe you put one of these cameras or a camera at the tourist site, a landing site, and so you get information about what happens before the visitors come and after they have gone. So are the animals going back to this place? Do they stay away forever, or what they are doing there? So maybe there is some information with this. There's a lot of experience with these cameras, also from network, from a camera-bound network on remote cameras, which is looking for the breeding phenology of the penguins right now. A very more simple method to get information from the field are just photo cameras. So, for instance, you can do repeated photographs of some sites of predefined sections to get information about long-term changes. Another thing could be that you take images of special things, for instance, about occurrence of alien species. These are examples of alien species we found, and but it's not only about taking the image. You need to define a protocol. What information should be taken with it? You need a geotag, so a geo information on the photograph, and so on. So if you take such images, or if you want to use this as a method, I think it's important that we have a database where all this information is going in a defined way that you can compare and analyze this data very efficient. With these ground photographs, you also can monitor pollution. If you have pollution like litter, like oil spills, whatever you find in the field, most things are not so large that you can see them from space or from drone. Some are, as we see in this example on the right side. We found some food drums in running mountain by the drone imagery. Of course, if you find some litter or waste which is too small, maybe it's easier just to take it away. But if you need to document it, same way, geotag it, have a good protocol, and put it to a database. Yes, diseased animals are possibly also an object for ground photographs. Avian flu is now a more and more bigger topic in the Antarctic, one example. So also this can be documented with ground photographs, but same thing, you need precise protocols for this about information of these photographs. Sampling is another monitoring option. A lot of things could be monitored with sampling, so pollution of air, of water, of soil, pathogens, microorganisms. So a lot of things can be sampled, but sampling is not so easy. You need a trained person or an expert doing the samples. You need permits for the sampling. You need maybe cooling for transport. And so it's not so very easy, but maybe it can have good information. Yeah, in summary, for these methods, you see this table, the different methods, the things we could, in my opinion, monitor with this. What you need, very often you need an expert offsite or on-site. Some things can be done by the operator personnel itself after some training. And for all of this, we need precise protocols. We need a database, a well-organized database. And should also not forget the processing and the analysis of this data is also some effort. So it's not only about getting the data from the field, but processing, analyzing takes a lot of time, effort, and of course, funding. Okay, I think that were the ideas I had on this topic. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osama. I have already a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is, do you have a minimum height below the drone flight starts to disturb the penguins? And to that related is, do you need to be directly above the colony in order to get the images to produce the mosaics?
So the minimum height is different from species to species. To fly high enough to have absolutely no disturbance is very high for most species, and for instance, for the emperor penguins, almost not possible. But yes, we have published several papers on this. Usually, for instance, 100-meter elevation is a good height where the disturbance is not so big. but the quality of the data is good enough. And yes, what was the second question? Sorry.
Do you have to be directly above the colony in order to produce the images for the mosaic, or can you be like a bit sideways, or yeah?
No, in fact, we need to be above the colony. So it's vertical images. If it's a little bit side looking, it's not so big problem. But you know, these images need to be overlapping, and there should be no gap between the images. And if you are looking oblique, then you always have topography, which hides some parts of the area, and also the you know, the size, the ground sample size, you know, what a pixel of the image means on the ground is different in the background of the image than in the foreground. And we tried a lot of this thing with oblique images, with photo cameras from high mountain and so on, but the result is very bad usually, and you cannot work very good. So finally, you have to fly over the colony with this.
Okay, thanks for these answers. And the third question is about imageries taken above slopes. Penguins are sometimes nesting on slopes. Do you use images for such nesting sites for your research? And if yes, what can you do in this case to improve the reliability of the data?
If we have image of slopes, sozusagen, the topography, so the slope itself is usually, the slopes are not so steep that they give a big problem itself. The bigger problem for slopes is that if you know, in a slope, the distance from ground to drone changes. So
yeah.
on top of a mountain, the drone is much nearer to the ground than in the valley. And so this means that the footprint of your image on the top of the mountain is smaller. And so this is the danger, that you get gaps in your image because the image on ground is the footprint is smaller. And this is what I meant in the planning of the flight. Topography is very important. So you need to get as good as possible elevation information before, which is not very good in most Antarctic sites, and plan with this topography things.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Anyone else from the audience without the chat? Lisa. You're still muted, Lisa.
One would think after 3 years, I would figure that out. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Osama, for your presentation. My name is Lisa Kelly, and I'm the Director of Operations and Government Affairs for IATO. Just a quick note, really interesting presentation, and I know many of our operators are carrying scientists on board who are doing some of this remote work on the landing sites. I thought that it might be helpful, and Rita, you have access to some maps which have locations of cameras where these cameras are set up on landing sites, many of the highly visited sites. And I'm happy, Rita, to send you an email to direct you where those are in our field operation manual if you felt that would be helpful.
Oh, that would be very helpful. I'd love that. Thank you.
Yep, great. I'll send you a separate email. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. That was not really a question, but a very helpful input. So really thanks for that. Any other questions to Osama and his quite interesting and lively presentation? I don't see anyone. No. Anything from the chat? No. Then thank you, Osama. I hope you stay with us for the rest of the workshop. We are now going back to the preparation of the workshop. We are going to have again a list of pressures impacts, direct and indirect impacts we have identified based on the literature survey we did. It's not any kind of prioritization. It's just the full list, or the hopefully almost full list of pressures and impacts we have identified. So it starts with invasive species, then pathogens, loss of fibers and human skin cells, dissemination of invasive species across, littering, physical interactions, visual and acoustic interactions, and kind of land conversion for tourism infrastructures, or not only tourism, but for visitors infrastructures, let's call it that way. And then a lot of impact. And again, here we are looking at the question of what are good indicators to monitor these pressures above and these impacts above, and which methods can we use. We have prepared again an example. We have the driver is landings. The pressure is introduction of invasive species, and we have seen the example by Osama. It can be plants, it can be animals. And then we have the impact of direct impacts, non-native species on the site, and loss of indigenous biodiversity as an impact. The indicator for the landings are the number of tourists/visitors and the staff, and the duration of the stay. The pressure could be propagals or enclosed gears of the visitors, or probably other ways of bringing invasive species into it. And then the impact could be measured on the indicator of the area where the invasive species can be found. And we have as methods analysis of the PVRs. Pressure can be basically, as shown, a sampling identification of these species by visual contacts. And then the impacts are vegetation assessments and mapping. And the question here is, Osama has covered a couple of methods to be used already in the presentation, but are there more elements that could be used? I think what I got from your presentation, or when it comes to sampling, you need very experienced staff to do that. Is that right, Osama? Did I catch that right? The question is here, what can be monitored on landing sites? On the first day, we also heard from Tom that he's doing a lot of work with the cameras, but maybe there are other ways which can be used and we are not aware of. And the questions are, what is experienced in practice? Osama and Tom gave us information, but maybe there is more out and we are not aware of. So that's one question. The other one is how to deal with the data gaps we have at the moment, and the data gaps refer to pressures, but also to probably sites where we have no information at the moment, and who could be in charge of the data collection. So that's the last three questions. I leave that this time on the screen. The presentation was online since yesterday, so most of you could have gone familiar with it. And I see a first comment by Michaela.
Thank you, Thomas, for this very good summary of our project, and thanks Osama for a really skillful presentation. My name is Michaela Meyer, and I'm working in Antarctica for many years, and in this project I am a freelancer scientific consultant, let's say that way. And Osama, I really liked that you showed these pictures. I think they were with the rat and the plants introduced. I really liked the picture because I was close to the one who took the picture like 20 years ago. And I just want to mention this was not caused by tourism. This was very close to different scientific stations. And as far as I remember, the rat came through containers to the stations or things like this happened. This is the worst case scenario, that we have these introduced species in Antarctica. Nevertheless, you also mentioned that the drone fly in a responsible way is also a difficult skill, but you said that to do the tracks over a certain landscape, you do it at home. So what about the idea we can bring Annette's citizen science thing together with a drone thing and develop something that you just start automatically drone flights through certain areas in a programmed way, in good weather conditions, of course, so that everybody can use everybody who got the skill and was trained, of course, can fly a train in always the same way. Everybody, a drone flies over certain places. I'm a drone flyer here in Germany for find bird nests in meadows also, and I know somehow it works, but in Antarctica it might be more difficult. Do you think it would be possible?
Osama, you are muted. Please unmute your.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think it's an interesting idea. So if you once made the planning for a site, so what you need for the planning is you need the topography as good as it can be, and you need, for instance, the extent of the object you want to cover. So if these things don't change, you can use in 1 year, in the second year, the same planning like you used in the year before, if the drone is the same. But for instance, if you see in the field that the colony extended for some reason, and then you need to adjust your planning. As usually we prepare the planning at home and then we adjust it a little bit in the field. But yes, if you work with some buffer in this, yes, you can prepare a planned flight at home, and somebody in the field pushes the button. So I think some combination would be possible.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Michaela, any question to that answer, or is that sufficient?
I'm ready so far, and I mean about adjusting in the field always depends what your question is. If I want to watch a certain place, I don't have to adjust. If I want to see how the penguin colony moves, I have to adjust it. So it's part of the scientific or monitoring question I have. But thank you, very nice.
Thank you. I see Annette raising her hand.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if it has been addressed in general, but I think what is also worthwhile thinking about is for all these different things, that need to be monitored, how often they need to be monitored, if it has to happen just once in a season or if we need continuous data, because I think that is very different depending on what you want to look at. Because if you, for example, use drones, and like Osama said, there is always some kind of level of disturbance, then maybe you shouldn't do this too often. Whereas if it's some autonomous sampling, that can happen regularly. But I think that's also quite interesting and important to incorporate.
I fully agree, and that brings me to the questions I had in mind to Osama, also on how often are you doing this in a season, and how long does it take such one type of assessment? Is it done in 1 day? Can you do it in a week, or what's the time frame for this as well?
So it depends on the size of the penguin colony, you know. We did it sometimes several times in the season, but more to understand the process of the changes. If you do it as monitoring, you need one time is okay, but you need to link the time or the date to the breeding phenology. That's why the best way would be if you have a remote camera installed in the area, which gives you information about the breeding phenology. And the group is Tom Hart and Hinke, they did a lot of work on this to get the breeding phenology from this remote camera systems. And if you have this, then you know what information is in your drone images, because you can link both together. And then you have one drone campaign, one drone flight or day, you do this. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or ideas on that topic?
Hi, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I just had a question for Osama about where you mentioned that you had some papers published on, I guess the disturbance experiments that you had done. Is that what you were talking about? I was curious how we could find those papers, and also when you publish, who are you doing that in conjunction with, I guess, or who is providing the sort of structure or the funding for those research and those experiments, and yeah, I guess I'm just sort of curious about how you develop the methodology, the hypotheses that you're trying to test when you go about those experiments.
So about the funding is very easy. It's the same organization who's funding this workshop. So the Environment Agency of Germany has funded our research on these disturbance experiments. And if you want, I can prepare you a list and send to you the list of the papers we
maybe you send that list to us and we add it as an annex to the minutes, so everybody can have a look, and we don't have to be on a personal level of email exchange, depending. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Hi everyone. Yeah, just on that last comment, I think that's very, very important, in that funding is absolutely crucial if we want to see some of this work done. And I think Osama and his colleagues have done absolutely tremendous work over many years in the South Shetland Islands. But I think that that's probably quite unusual, that there's not generally that level of commitment to that monitoring work that's been, more widely sort of put in place. So I think until we actually have some reasonably established mechanism for actually getting funds to allow this monitoring to occur, I suspect it's going to be very difficult to actually see it put into practice. So I suppose from a very practical perspective, we just need that funding available. Otherwise, we can do a lot of talking, but it's not going to happen until we get people on the ground doing the work, or remote sensing or whatever methods. But that's absolutely critical. So it's talking to the funding bodies to put in place money to allow people to do this, what can be relatively routine environmental monitoring on the ground, rather than some exciting blue sky research, which tends to attract the funding at the moment. So just a point there, but I will keep quiet now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. That's an absolutely valid point. That was also discussed last year in Berlin a couple of times, that what comes first, the type of monitoring and then asking for the money, or what can we do with the existing money? Probably from your description, it's maybe something in the middle. that we have to have a baseline with based on existing funding, but there is definitely a need to invest in a stable funding mechanism. Time and political investment here needed. Anyone else that wants to say something?
Maybe I just extend one sentence to what Kevin said as an example. Some years ago, there were these guidelines on drone flights were made in the EDCM. But the research we did on this was focused on this guidelines, and I think one of the last sentences of this guideline was written that the parties are encouraged to make more science on this, to get more information about more species, more technology, and so on. And I don't remember precisely the year. I think it was 2018 or something like this. And since this time, there was not much happening. So we did one more species. So we added the emperor penguins, and I think there was the Americans did something on shin straps and seals, and I think that was almost everything, if I don't miss one study. So obviously there is not much happening if there is no funding.
I mean, Osama, I have a more practical question related to this. Even if the funding is fully available, do you consider that there are enough people that are able to carry out that monitoring on a regular basis? I mean, it's not that this is something where you get a freshie from the university and say, okay, let's start monitoring, like in other areas where you can easily train people on water sampling within weeks. Yeah, so that's another question. Do we have enough, or do you consider that there are enough people that are able to do that?
Do what this
satellite and drone monitoring on much more sites than where you are at the moment. Yeah.
So I think in the last table I wrote a little bit what I think where we need experts with some experience, and where maybe some trained persons from the operator can do the things too. Yes.
Yeah.
And for instance, this disturbance experiment thing is something where we really need an expert. So this is not very easy. Also, in our group, not everybody can do it alone. So, for instance, the behavior analysis is very, yes, you need some. But other things, as we explained before, with the drones, maybe could be transferred to trained people. So I think there's different, depends on the method and on the object. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other comment, question also to the ones that are on the screen? Who maybe also on the question of who should be in charge of the data? What kind of structure do we need behind this? Because at the moment, I think it's with you, Osama, most of the data and given to UBA, but is it accessible for everyone?
So we try to publish the things, but I think many people who work in science know this thing, we call it the data cemetery. There is still a lot of data we have, which could be published, but there's not enough funding for it. Once you are in the field, you very often take more data because the situation is good, and from a satellite image or drone image, you can read much more things than only, for instance, the penguins or whatever you do. So there is. So that's why I think the what comes after the field work is very important. So where is the database? Who's processing the data? Are the data comparable? This is what I meant with protocols. So if somebody takes an image of an alien species he found, what information he should send with this image, and so that this data can be analyzed easy and efficient. So I think this is very important, because we experience this very often. You come from the field, you get data from colleagues, and then to the analysis for itself, the process is not the most complicated thing. The most complicated thing is to organize the data. This is, if you have different sources of data, for instance, this is where it takes much time and effort.
Thank you. Rita.
Thank you. And first of all, I just want to thank Osama for this great presentation. It's been really inspiring. I've been contemplating our information from yesterday's workshop and what I heard today, and I think I want to get away a bit from the remote sensing and the drones, but get more to the cameras. And thank you, Lisa, for the email, by the way. I was wondering, and this might be a weird question, but we talked about the science projects, or the citizen science projects yesterday, that were so successful. And it was more like the environmental monitoring aspects, where the tourists even could take the nice pictures of the whales and stuff like that. And so I was wondering if our participants from the tourism industry could answer or give me an estimate if they think that tourists could be participants in projects where they would monitor their own footprint, like let's say that take pictures of the landing sites at some given spots and just load them up in an app. It seems a little bit difficult to me to persuade operators to do this, because no one wants to tell their customers that they're part of the problem, you know.
Thank you, Rita, for this statement. Gina.
Yep. Can you hear me, Thomas?
Yes, we can hear you.
You know, I think as it relates to having the guests participate in things, I think yesterday Annette really talked about how important it is to allow the guests to understand that they're also helping contribute to what is going on, especially when they visit certain places in a positive way. So I think if there was something in place regarding a citizen science project where guests were taking pictures, I think the guests would probably participate in that. We've seen that in lots of different projects. And I think the projects that Rita talked about, or Annette talked about yesterday, a lot of those are allowing the guests to go ahead and take pictures of a variety of different things when they go to a landing, whether it's the clouds in the sky or down below with the bugs. So I think it's something that the guests can definitely get involved in. From an IATO standpoint, and I think we slightly touched upon this at ATCM this year, we are actually embarking on something where we're asking the operators to start to get involved with taking pictures to help IATO with some of our management decisions. And that is something that we are doing at our level, but doing something that involves the guests, I think long term will probably prove to be beneficial as well.
Thank you on that statement, comment. Any reaction? Well, ladies first. Alison.
Super, thank you. My name's Allison. I'm the head of tourism for the government of South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. And I just wanted to add that that's something that we actually piloted this year, was having the operators fill out. We selected one site where we wanted to track impact from tourism, and we created a checklist with some photo options. So different things we were looking for: flora, fauna, changes to the site itself. If there was any new wildlife that they were noticing, any invasives they were noticing, as well as heritage. There's a lot of heritage in South Georgia. So anyways, we had a quick little checklist that we asked some of the operators to fill out. while they were on shore. While we didn't have complete uptake, we had some good uptake, a lot of good feedback from the forums themselves. But yeah, so it's something that we obviously as a government don't have a lot of capability to do monitoring at these remote sites. So the ships and the visitors themselves are the best option for us. And that's something that, we're looking to work with IATO to help do a little more. But from the reaction from the operators, they were very happy to help with that. And, the form should only really take them 10 minutes. Maybe it's not something we do over the whole season.
Alison, are you able to share that form with us? Are you able to share that form? Yeah, that would be interesting, please. Yes.
Yep. Who should I send it to?
To the email on the website. There is
super.
on the workshop website, there is an email address for contact. Just send it there. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So anyways, in short, it's something that, as a government, we're trying to pilot, and it has, not complete uptake, but something that we'd like to workshop and work forward with. So for us, it's nice to work with the industry.
Thank you for that positive feedback. Damon.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Osama, and the conversation so far. I'd like to just give a perspective from representing one of the private sector operators working in Antarctica, and building on the points actually that both Kevin made from BAS and Rita and Gina from IATO. Firstly, I would just like to challenge the notion that a tourism operator doesn't have, is not invested, if you like, in the long-term protection of the Antarctic. If one was purely looking at it commercially, it is, of course, the asset that is what the, in terms of interaction of going to visit it, but also those involved do care in the same way. And I think that one of the challenges of monitoring is the inherent maybe lack of trust of different sectors. So I'm getting a sense of a signal of how do you get independent, we're talking about independent monitoring within the limitations of the logistics of getting to these places. And the second point is that, as Alison noted in South Georgia, it's exciting, this idea of more systematic monitoring that is self-monitoring, is that the way that I see that the audit of that can occur, if you will, is that if everybody involved knows what the parameters that are being looked at, this idea that tourists could take pictures or whatever, the fact that we all have phones and cameras and that everybody is watching everybody else, I think clarity of what the common goal is in terms of how that monitoring occurs, of those aims in terms of the way that that self-reporting would be most robust. And then thirdly, the point that Kevin made about the needs for funding I completely concur. The monitoring globally of any environmental parameter is, as we all know, is systemically underfunded. And that it's not going to be anything new necessarily. I think novel forms of funding, sadly, I don't share the view that a funding agency like a national body or something is ever going to have sufficient funds maybe to monitor at a level of being as robust as we'd like. And novel forms of funding in order to stimulate that, both in terms of the field data collection, but as was mentioned yesterday, and I think I intervened yesterday also, it's the off vessel. It's all of the post-processing, the analysis, interpretation. It's all very well having great remote sensing, as Osama highlighted, but without being able to analyze that. And all of that costs money too. I don't think that the information is going to filter through to be able to support decision support indicators and so on without it.
Thank you for that, Damon. Anyone to reflect on that? No. Attila.
Hello, everyone. I would like to start by thanking Osama for the wonderful presentation. So I would like to highlight something different that Osama almost mentioned in his last words. Rather than the funding, another issue will be the standardization of gathered data. So to develop a framework, it will be essential to create a monitoring guideline, including the methods to follow and requirements, infrastructure. And since the implementation of this monitoring will be conducted by different researchers or visitors from different parties, this is not really limited to the tourism monitoring, but also essential for the general environmental monitoring in Antarctica. Especially, this would be more important when you consider the chemical parameters which have to be analyzed in the laboratories.
Yeah. But the good thing is for the chemical parameters, at least there are some protocols we can start from, because they are, well, either ISO norms for some parts of it, or at least for Europe, there are European standards. So I think it's there, but I think for all the other things, it might be really more difficult because you definitely start from scratch. Yeah. Okay, anything else? Well, Rita, if we don't have any further comments, I mean, I see Amanda popping up. I'm not sure if she wants to say something. No.
Yeah, I can
Yes.
just I can pop in with something, Thomas. Just a general comment, because I was just thinking about the literature review and that slide that you had up a bit previously, and I think you had microplastics on there. And we've been talking a lot about cameras and wildlife, and thanks very much, Osama, for that talk. But just in case you had perhaps missed it, there is quite a recent paper, but it's just a preprint at the moment, which is about microplastic sampling. And you might have seen it because it involved, I think it's Emily Rowland from British Antarctic Survey, and also I think AWI was involved as well. But they were sampling at 3 different sites of inland Antarctica for microplastics. And it sounds like the technology to do that is advancing quite quickly. But in terms of monitoring remotely, I think there was scope there, some quite good results, not just for understanding local pollution, so from campsites and research stations, but also they were able to understand kind of the flux of plastics. It might be coming, say, from the ocean sort of into the atmosphere and then across onto the Antarctic continent. So that was supported by one of our land-based operators. So that might just be something else that's worth looking into. And if you haven't seen that paper yet, I'm happy to send along a link.
Yeah, send it for sure, because we might have it, but can't confirm at the moment. Michaela, you want to react on this, or?
Yeah, general review, but Amanda, thank you for just giving me a easier entrance to my comment. I was going to say anyway. There are so many good things going on in the field, and as you mentioned, the microplastic, you always have to do research every day new to find all the things that are going on. And what, in my opinion, also the camera system with the penguins is a super method and is already running for years. And so there is nothing we have really to find now new. But what we need is a point where all this comes together. And we don't have to do research every day new to see what is happening in this environmental monitoring system. What we need, for my opinion, and for the ATCM recommendation is a database. Also, Osama mentioned, is we need a point where all these monitoring data come together and get interpreted also together in a common consensus, in my opinion. So in that way, I think we don't need urgently new monitoring method. What we urgently need is a point where all of this already happening comes together. Maybe this goes back to funding, of course, and political, but I see this actually gives some discussion background. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. I see Kevin, then Sena, and then Rita.
So I'll be very brief, but just to say, I absolutely agree that is a key point that's just been made. I do wonder if it's better to think of this in terms of a central whole Antarctic point or database or whatever, or if there might be benefit in thinking perhaps more smaller scale in terms of, I don't know, around the region of some specific research stations, or some people who are active in specific parts of Antarctica might want to coordinate their data in a more in a closer way, in a more personal way that might actually yield better results and might actually see some changes on the ground. My fear is that if you put data into some huge database, sometimes it can lose something along the way, and it's not quite so easy to kind of take that and really integrate it in a useful way that makes a difference on the ground. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. As a small reflection on that, maybe it's also a combination of both, because this is basically what we have in Europe. Each member state has its own monitoring, and that can be very, very site specific. But still, there are some monitoring information and indicators that are reported to the Environmental Agency, European Environmental Agency, and they do kind of more complete but less detailed assessments than based on that. So maybe it's both. Zena.
Yes, hi. I don't think I ever got the chance to introduce myself. I'm from Canada. I'm a permit officer with Environment Climate Change Canada. So we are the competent authority in Canada. And I had a similar thought and a question for, was it Allison who mentioned the sort of monitoring work that she as a competent authority was working on with her operators, and with those survey checklists, the information that you're gathering through those, I was wondering what you did with your data so far. Is it kept internally, or are you sharing it more widely? And specifically, I'm thinking about the tools we already have in use, so the EIS platform, where in theory we upload all of the information that we've collected pre-season and then post-season, and then I'm trying to rack my brain to think if there's anywhere in there where this would fit in terms of a repository of a certain kind of monitoring. Maybe we call it basic monitoring, or I'm not too sure what, but I know from our perspective that's basically where we are at. The only information that we have of our own that we collect is through our permit application process and our post-visit reports. And so that all goes into the EIS. In terms of monitoring, we would love to be able to at least have some feedback on all of the impact assessments that we've reviewed. To me, I see those as sort of hypothesis that the permit applicants in our case have proposed in terms of their impacts, and how their mitigation measures will attenuate that. And so it'd be great if we could have then some way of fact checking or ground truthing just those set of assumptions. And that sort of sounds like the system that Allison was describing her having started to set up. And I was wondering if other countries already did that, and if so, could we feed that into the EIS so it could be shared and sort of brought together? My thoughts.
Thank you, Senna. Rita, probably you can answer that question also, because you're a national authority as well, and then Kevin.
Well, I try to be not that hateful about the EIS system, because I really despise it. It has gotten better, but it's not user friendly at all. And I think I had the notion that we might need a third workshop just on data processing, data storage, data assessment, and on the funding on top. So maybe I will share that in the closing remarks then again. The EIS system is, well, I have the feeling that it's not that widely used throughout the national competent authorities. and in different qualities even then. So this is not my go-to source for relevant data, but I just want to back up what Michaela said, that we do not need to reinvent the wheel. There is so much going on already. There are so many projects, and we just need to come together like we try here and share all this information and collect it and then see what can we do with it. So I always think that IATO itself has a huge treasure of information, and I'm always so grateful that you're sharing it with us, in your reports at ATCM level and everything, and you're always so helpful when we're asked you. So yeah, on the microplastics thing, I haven't seen that specific article. Thanks for sending it. I will share it. But things like that are popping up, and I also saw that there is a citizen science project that you can attend worldwide with a elaborated protocol, and maybe it could be adapted to Antarctic environments as well. So well, we could see about this, because microplastics is yeah, well, an upcoming topic, I think, not only in the touristic field. So yeah, I hope we can share a lot more, and I would love to invite you to well, reach out if you have information to share it, and then we would like to come together again. Oh, well, here. So yeah, that's my 5 cents. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Rita. Kevin, you want to react on Zena, or yeah?
Yeah, just to respond to Zena's point. So from a scientific perspective, for all of the environmental impact assessments that we look at, and we try to suggest mitigation measures, etc., we also ask at the end of the season that the applicant fills in a post-season review form where they actually give us feedback on all of the various elements of the things they said they would do, how it went, if they did anything that they said that was in addition to what they originally thought, etc., etc. And actually that's been really useful, because it helps us with this whole concept of continuous improvement in terms of learning from what people have done in the field. It's not just here's your form, here's your permit or whatever, off you go, and then we never hear anything again. This way it gives us something to respond to make our practice better. So it's worked really well over the years.
Thank you for that feedback. I briefly saw a hand popping up, but it's gone again, so I'm not sure who it was. Probably an accident on the keyboard. Okay, if there are no further comments, reflections, I would stop the workshop here.
Thomas, there is noch ein Kommentar. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. There's one. Yeah, thanks. There's one comment from Michael from Plant Tours saying, general comment, it probably goes without saying that a combination of public science and drone flight is less desirable. No guest will be allowed to take a drone with them on our ship. Okay, yeah, probably that's obvious. But you never know where people are ending with being creative in exploring new fields of action. Lisa.
I was thank you, and apologies for jumping in quickly. But just to follow up on Michael's comment, that as many of you know, that IATO has a no recreational drone policy. So none of the guests are able to fly drones recreationally. So they would be seeking another type of authorization or permit depending on their competent authority and the operators, as Michael has said for his vessels. But operators have the final say-so to say no, because they have various reasons to do so. But one of those, maintaining those intrinsic Antarctic values rather than having drones up.
No, but I understood the comment from Michael more towards development of citizen science projects with drones, which cause an issue per se. Okay, then I have another comment from Zena. Kevin, is that feedback from something you could share with the group, or maybe via the competent authority discussion forum?
Yes, I'm sure I can dig that out. It might take me, maybe not something I can do in the next few minutes, but I can try and dig it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So any burning questions, comments that you have? There's still time for discussion. If not, I think I would close the workshop for today. And thank all of you for being with us, and for those who made statements and got involved in the discussion, a particular thank you. I know it's not that easy if everything is online, and we are spread across the world. But really a lot of thanks. Also, thank you to all of you who sent information, research articles, whatever information over the last days. Very helpful. We are going to collect that further. We are using it, and we are, if possible, I think not all of the information shared can be disseminated with the minutes, but most of it, because I think a pre-printed paper is not something we would share with the minutes. But we will make that available for all of you and those who couldn't come today. And in that regard, I hand over to Rita for final steps or next steps and final remarks.
Thank you, Thomas. And for the closing remarks, let me start with a thank you for participating. Thank you for working with us. Thank you for sharing information. And it's been really interesting for me. Thanks for the presentations, especially to Osama and Annette. Yeah, well, we will prepare the minutes, or at least Thomas and Franziska and Michaela will, and we will share that with you via the website and the sources that we have. So the next step is sharing this report with you and the minutes, and from then on we will use all the information you gave us and work on developing the concept that we can share then hopefully with CEP and ATCM in 2024 in India. I think it's a really interesting building block because it fits in very well with the party's efforts to jump up on the monitoring and jump up on tourism regulation as well. There is a lot of work going on and a lot of preparation to be done for that. So we hope that we can make very interesting input, helpful input with our project here. It's just a little building block. We're aware of that, but nonetheless, we hope it's going to be helpful, and you were helpful. And so I thank you once again, and I close the workshop officially now.
Thank you, Rita. Have a good trip back to your kitchen, sleeping room, home, wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Lisa, you want to say something? No. Okay.
Just applause.
Just clapping. Thank you. Yeah.